This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Telly Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Taiwan looks to sharply boost defense spending in the coming year amid U.S. pressure to invest more for its own protection. President Xi Jinping in Tibet, marking the Himalayan region's 60th anniversary, is a Chinese autonomous territory, calling for ethnic unity amid simmering tensions over Beijing's contested rule. While meantime, China's top diplomat Wang Yi is in Pakistan, strengthening political, economic and security ties, while pushing also for deeper cooperation with Afghanistan. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy says a meeting with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin is possible, but only after security guarantees are in place, and he doesn't want them to include China. The U.S. government eyeing a possible investment in Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC as the Trump administration looks to repurpose Biden-era funding. Ahead on East Asia tonight, what makes South Korean culture resonate with audiences worldwide? And how can the nation further elevate its achievements? President Myung has an idea. Also in East Asia tonight, what makes South Korean culture resonate with audiences worldwide? And how can the nation further elevate its achievements? President Myung has an idea. Taiwan is ramping up its defense spending for next year to more than 3% of its GDP, a threshold that was last crossed back in 2009. Well, the moves come as Taipei invests in new equipment in the face of pressure from both Washington and Beijing. Now, Taiwan's defense ministry is proposing to spend about $31 billion. That's a 23% hike in spending compared to this year. The 2026 budget includes, for the first time, funding for Coast Guards, which have frequently been engaged in standoffs with their Chinese counterparts.
这是我们再一次用这样的具体向全世界也向国人展现我们维护国家主权安全跟印太地区稳定安全跟世界共同责任的决心跟能力。
Now, China has intensified military pressure around the island in recent years. Beijing views Taiwan as its Chinese territory, which the island rejects. Taiwan also faces mounting calls from the U.S. to spend more on its defense. Washington said that Taipei is spending too little to deter threats from Chinese and has urged it to increase the budget to 10% of GDP. For more on this, CNA's Victoria Jen, she joins us live from Taipei. Vic, firstly, what makes Taiwan's 2026 defense budget stand out from previous years? And also, do we know what exactly this big increase is going to cover?
Well, one of the biggest changes is that Taiwan is including the Coast Guard in its defense budget for the very first time. That may sound technical, but it's significant because the Coast Guard is often the first to face off with the Chinese ships in the Taiwan Strait. And in any conflict, it would be folded into the Navy's operations. So this officially recognizes its frontline role.
而是我们要因应中共的灰色地带对我们造成的威胁，有的时候在捍卫我们的海疆或保持我们的海上交通线，就是所谓的 SLAC 的时候，不一定是由海军来担任这个任务，所以有时我们必须会去使用海巡署 Coast Guard。那这里的话，其实也是去应对中共它日益成长的中国海警。
The budget also sets aside funds for veterans and modernization projects, things like Taiwan's indigenous submarine program, missile upgrades, and more asymmetric weapons that makes an invasion harder. It also signals that Taiwan isn't just relying on U.S. arms sales, but also investing in its own defense industry to sustain capabilities long term. So overall, this year's budget expands what counts as national defense, while modernizing the military in ways aimed at deterring China more effectively.
So, Vic, what also sounds tricky is the fact that the proposal still has to go through the opposition-controlled parliament before it actually takes effect. So, how likely will the plan actually pass?
That's really the big political hurdle here. The DPP may control the presidency, but it doesn't have enough seats in parliament to push the budget through on its own. So President William Lai will need some level of cooperation from the Kuomintang and smaller parties to get this through. And remember, the opposition has often accused the government of overspending or mismanaging funds. So there could be some heated debate. Now, that said, defense is a tricky area for politicians to oppose outright. With China flying sorties almost daily and holding war games earlier this year, the public mood is very much in favor of boosting security. So no party wants to be seen as blocking money that's meant to keep Taiwan safe. What we are more likely to see is bargaining over the deals, whether too much is going to expensive projects like submarines, or if more should be directed towards missiles and Coast Guard, which have more immediate impact. Now, while the road may be bumpy, most analysts expect some version of the budget to get approved. The real question now is how much gets reshaped during negotiations.
All right, so it might not quite be $31 billion then. We should be looking out for that report. Thank you so much. CNA's Victoria Jen in Taipei. China's President Xi Jinping made a rare visit to the Tibetan capital of Lhasa for a grand ceremony celebrating Tibet's 60th anniversary as a Chinese autonomous region. Now, Mr. Xi is accompanied by a huge delegation from Beijing that included senior leaders from the party and government. Festivities are held at a massive square by the Potala Palace that includes a parade with thousands cheering on. And during the ceremony, Mr. Xi called for ethnic unity and religious harmony to stabilize and develop Tibet. Party officials lauded the region's economic progress while warning that any attempt to split the motherland and undermine Tibet's stability is doomed to fail. The Tibet Autonomous Region was established back in 1965, 6 years after a failed uprising by the 14th Dalai Lama, who saw the spiritual leader fleeing into exile in India. China has been exerting greater institutional control in Tibet under President Xi. Some human rights groups and Tibetans in exile have called it oppressive. But Beijing rejects those accusations, saying that the lives of ordinary people have dramatically improved. Well, this is Mr. Xi's second ever trip to Tibet as Chinese president. At a gala event last night, the Chinese president called on Tibet to stay committed to his party's leadership and work towards advancing its key infrastructure projects. Mr. Xi also urged Tibetan Buddhism to adapt to the mainland's socialist society. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Pakistan, where he called to strengthen trilateral exchanges at all levels with Islamabad and Kabul. This is the latest stop for his whirlwind diplomatic trip that saw him visit India and Afghanistan before Pakistan. Now, Mr. Wang has been holding talks with his Pakistani counterpart, Ishan Dar. Now, the leaders have chaired a meeting aimed at deepening political, economic and security cooperation. The top Chinese diplomat attended three-way talks with diplomats from Pakistan and Afghanistan in Kabul yesterday, where he urged greater strategic trust and security cooperation. Now, the officials also discussed the expansion of trade and investment cooperation, and that includes extending the China-Pakistan economic corridor into Afghanistan to boost Kabul's trade, transit and development of opportunities. Well, for more, we are joined by Hira Mustafa live from Islamabad. So, Hira, first up, walk us through the context and the meetings that Wang Yi has been holding in Pakistan, and what are some of the highlights from the press conference?
Well, absolutely. Since the start of the day, we have seen a flurry of meetings held between the Pakistani officials and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. And just a while ago, there was a media briefing being carried out by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, along with his Chinese counterpart, Mr. Wang Yi. In that press briefing, both the leaders, both the foreign ministers expressed their interest in upgradation of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Phase 2. And we have seen that, as you mentioned, that in the trilateral talks with Afghanistan also, China expressed its interest in the extension of CPEC Phase 2, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor to Afghanistan also. So with regards to this, we have seen same level of sentiment being echoed by Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. Both the officials also expressed their desire of preparations with regards to the 75th diplomatic ties anniversary that's going to be celebrated next year. So there will be exchange of meetings with regards to that. And he also said that China is satisfied with the counter-terrorism efforts that Pakistan is making with regards to the security of Chinese officials that are working at China-Pakistan Economic Corridor Phase 1 projects in Pakistan's province of Balochistan. And in that province, we have seen that insurgency has been running from past couple of years. So it's always been a point of concern for the Chinese officials. So with regards to this, we have seen Chinese Foreign Minister lauding Pakistani officials for taking preventive measures in order to secure CPEC projects in that region. Apart from this, Foreign Minister of Pakistan Ishaq Dar also said that there will be business-to-business meetings when Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, will be undertaking a visit to Beijing to participate at the SCO summit. And we have seen same level of reciprocation from the Chinese Foreign Minister also, in which he said that China warmly welcomes Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visits to Beijing. We have also seen remarks made by the Chinese Foreign Minister in which he sympathized with the Pakistani nation with regards to the devastation caused by the floods, and he said that China will be immediately giving some assistance in order to help Pakistan with the rescue and relief efforts.
Here, I also want to talk about Wang Yi's meetings with the Taliban in Afghanistan and India. Any indication there that China can play some sort of a role in restoring ties?
Well, especially when we talk about the relationship between India and Pakistan, experts who we are speaking to in the capital are telling us that China can be instrumental in playing its role in de-escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. As in today's media briefing, they say that China's foreign minister clearly stated that China believes in stable and prosperous South Asia, and the message is clear that China is interested in having stability with all the regional countries, and we have seen that kind of a role being played by China when there were informal talks held in May in Kabul between Pakistan, China and Afghanistan leadership. And after that, we have seen that ambassadorial level contact has been established between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So experts believe that yes, China can play its role in maintaining in bringing the regional countries at the table of diplomacy, but the evolving geopolitical dynamics in South Asia are going to play a very important role in moving forward with the regional cooperation.
Many thanks for that report. Hira Mustafa speaking to us live from Islamabad. We are going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, one of Taiwan's largest pension fund looks to steer clear of Hong Kong over its growing closeness to mainland China. And fewer firms clinch regulatory approvals from Chinese authorities to list outside the mainland, a concern weighing on Hong Kong listing boom.
On this episode of Singapore Hour, it's island thrills and seaside chills at this waterfront town.
Prawning is something that is very unique to Mongolians.
Plus, the secrets to staying chic on the cheap.
Auntie and uncle look at you. Yeah, I think you're doing something right. Yeah.
And a duo adding a dash of Balkan spice to paradise. Your weekly dose of what's fresh and fun on Singapore Hour, Friday on CNA.
How to preserve capital and still earn interest. Low-risk options as interest rates trend downwards. How this young Filipina achieved her bucket list to visit all the countries of the world. Plus, selling the taste of home from a vending machine. Money Mind, Saturday on CNA.
This song has been 3 months in the making. Going on a journey. It all started because I wanted to find the story of Singapore in objects around us. The hunt has taken me to some unexpected places. Just gonna hide behind you. I met surprising people. Are you who I'm looking for? Oh, I love you so much. And animals. Where are Mick? I also had to relive some horrible memories. You were one of the people who first started streaming in secondary school.
Yes.
Chinese E.
Yeah, I teach you word by word.
Li,
Di,
Hu,
Sheng,
Li, Hu, Sheng. I'll be revealing some pretty surprising objects with hidden stories of Singapore.
This uniform was not made for Singapore Airlines.
Singapore Hidden in 40 Objects. Starts 1st September, Monday on CNA.
Hello there, glad you can join us on East Asia. Tonight, you are just in time for some business news with Roland Lim. Roland, U.S. government's intervention in corporate matters is actually expanding into Taiwan. What's that all about?
That's right, Oseli. There's reports that the U.S. is reportedly seeking a seat on the board of Taiwan's TSMC. Now, that's according to the island's Minister of Economic Affairs, J.W. Kuo. Now, he told lawmakers that any plans to do so would need approval from Taipei. His remarks comes after U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that Washington is seeking equity in chip makers that receive funding from the CHIPS and Science Act. This includes TSMC, Samsung, and Micron. Earlier this week, the White House confirmed reports that it is seeking a stake in Intel.
As for this 10% government stake deal, the Department of Commerce continues to work on it. I know Secretary Lutnick is working on it and ironing out the details.
Last year, TSMC received some $6.6 billion in subsidies under the CHIPS Act to produce semiconductors in the United States. Now, in March, TSMC announced that it'll invest an additional $100 billion in the U.S., bringing its commitment up to $165 billion. It's a move that has helped the Taiwanese chipmaker avoid a planned 100% tariff on semiconductors. South Korean firms are reportedly bumping up their U.S. investment plans substantially. It is set to announce around $150 billion in new private investments during President Lee Jae-myung's summit with President Trump next week. Local media reports say the pledge will likely cover both ongoing and future projects. It comes on top of the $350 billion South Korea agreed to invest in the U.S. under a trade deal struck last month. Now, that agreement capped U.S. tariffs on Korean goods at 15%, one of the most favorable rates. Major Korean firms already have big-ticket projects in the U.S. Samsung is building a multi-billion-dollar semiconductor plant in Texas, while Hyundai has pledged $21 billion for auto and steel facilities. Our top business leaders, including LG's Koo Kwang-mo and SK's Chae Tae-won, are set to accompany President Lee on his trip to Washington. Japanese automakers are beginning to pass on part of the cost of U.S. tariffs to American buyers instead of absorbing the impact. Finance Ministry data shows the average price of Japanese cars exported to the U.S. rose in July to 3.41 million yen. That's up from 3.38 million in June. The Bank of Japan also reported export prices of cars climbing for the first time in 6 months. Now, in April, the Trump administration imposed an additional 25% tariff on imported cars, bringing the total duty to 27.5%. Automakers initially cut export prices to keep U.S. retail prices steady, but more are now raising prices amid doubts about the sustainability of this approach. Toyota, for instance, increased prices in July by an average of $270 per model. That's still less than the full cost of the tariff. Taiwan is becoming increasingly cautious of Hong Kong's deepening ties with mainland China. One of Taiwan's largest pension funds has reportedly guided outside firms against using Hong Kong-registered entities to manage its money. The Bureau of Labor Funds, which manages about $235 billion, has been verbally asking third-party managers to exclude Hong Kong entities from its contracts since last year. That's according to Bloomberg. The BLF regularly gives out investment-related mandates to global asset managers. While its cautious stance on China due to economic concerns and financial risks have been open, the pivot away from Hong Kong is relatively new and started as recently as 2 years ago. The report suggests Hong Kong becoming increasingly intertwined with mainland China, despite its one country, two systems setup, may have caused the shift. The BLF manages pension funds from compulsory contributions from employers to employees in the jurisdiction. Its mainland China investments stood at about $1.58 billion, or 0.8% of the fund's total exposure, as at the end of 2023. Hong Kong stock market rally faces uncertainty as China's securities regulators slows approval for new listings outside the mainland. Now, from July to mid-August, only 3 companies managed to get clearance in Hong Kong as compared to more than 50 in the first half of the year. Demand, however, remains strong. 76 firms applied during that period, leaving 240 queuing for approval. Analysts say the pace now depends entirely on the regulator, a decision that could shape Hong Kong's IPO boom. Now, authorities have been urging Chinese firms to list in the city. That promise of more IPOs has helped lift the Hong Kong exchange, which posted record revenue and profit for the first half of 2025 yesterday. China's exports of rare earth magnets rebounded in July after it reached deals with the US and Europe to relax curbs. Shipments jumped nearly 75% on month to reach a 6-month high. Beijing restricted exports to the US back in April in retaliation for Trump's tariffs. Those curbs rattled global supply chains and forced some car makers outside of China to suspend production. Malaysia aims to position itself as a key player in the global critical mineral supply chain, which is currently dominated by China. The government is pushing for greater cooperation between state and federal authorities to tap into the vast rare earth deposits, estimated to be worth over $200 billion. CNA's Melissa Goh has more on Malaysia's plan to build an integrated rare earth ecosystem, from mining and processing to producing its own magnets.
Malaysia is home to the largest heavy rare earth processing plant outside China. The Lynas Advanced Materials Plant, located on a 100-hectare site in Gebeng, Pahang, is fully owned by Australia's Lynas Rare Earths. It currently processes 1,500 tons of heavy rare earths to produce minerals such as dysprosium and terbium, which are used for making heat-resistant magnets that power high-tech devices from defense, medical equipment to wind turbines and electric cars. Over the last 12 years, Lynas says it's invested over $700 million in Malaysia and contributed over $1 billion to its economy. In May, its CEO, Amanda Lacaze, signed an MOU with Kelantan State Investment Arm for the supply of mixed rare earth carbonate as potential feedstocks. Lynas has also pledged to work with Korea's JS Link to manufacture up to 3,000 tons of supermagnets annually in Kuantan. These projects are expected to spearhead the development of Malaysia's rare earth ecosystem.
Fokus kepada pembangunan kapasiti tempatan, dan teknologi perlombongan, penulinan dan pemisahan melalui kerjasama strategi luar negara. REE diutamakan untuk kegunaan domestik bagi membina industri pertengahan dan hiliran.
In navigating geopolitical dynamics, Malaysia is also welcoming investments from China as well as other global partners. In April, during the Chinese president's visit to Malaysia, rare earth processing was highlighted as a key area for bilateral cooperation.
Not many countries can boast what we are doing. We have the resource. We already have liners, and that's something that is strategic to this. If we can really pull off the China processing plant, then that will be a huge win.
But he cautioned against rushing into mining and processing without the right policies and environmental safeguards in place.
I keep telling the state governments, don't go in for the quick buck, but actually think long term, think on how people can have that assurance when they buy from you that it's being done properly.
The federal government has set strict guidelines for rare earth mining and licensing requirements under existing laws. More than 16 million tons of rare earth deposits, estimated to be worth over $200 billion, are located mainly in the east coastal states of Terengganu, Kelantan and Pahang.
A lot of these states where a lot of the critical minerals sit on don't really have the SOP adopted. So we're looking at Kelantan, we're looking at Terengganu, and of course this is a concern.
Malaysia, which currently supplies 13% of global critical mineral demand, must seize the opportunity, experts say, to move into high-value downstream activities.
Now we need to strike while the iron is hot. Right. We already have a midstream ecosystem in Malaysia. Let's not waste this opportunity. Right. Right now, everyone is looking to diversify their supply chains, and Malaysia is in a strong position to leverage on all these.
Now, the government's strategic task force projects that the production of super magnets will generate some $3 billion in revenue by year 2030. Melissa Go, CNA, Kuala Lumpur.
And that is your business update. Oteli.
Thanks, Roland. Well, we're going to go for another break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, UN Chief Antonio Guterres calls for greater investment in Africa at a development conference hosted by Tokyo. Can Japan offer itself as an alternative to China and the West? We'll find out in a short while from an expert.
Warung Pak Safari is the first on the Michelin Beef Gourmand list, selling mee soto, mee rebus.
It's more than 20 spices on the mee soto. 2023, when we got the Big Gourmand,
a little bit stressed because
at least 30% of people increase. The pressure is always there because I have to keep up.
I Am a Hawker, the Bib Gourmand edition, Saturday on CNA.
In about 2 over months, I applied for 300 plus jobs.
I never expected to find myself unemployed in my 30s.
Your 30s are supposed to be the prime of your life, but unemployment rates for this group saw an uptick. How concerned should we be about this age group? Join me and my guests in a special 1-hour forum on being jobless in your 30s. Talking Point, Sunday on CNA.
Who are we waiting for at the airport?
What's his name? Chase?
No, he's baby bird.
It's believed each lived about 5 minutes after swallowing a mixture of cyanide.
It's kind of like a proof for me that I wasn't unwanted.
Mary!
Come on over. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Taiwan plans to ramp up defense spending next year amid U.S. pressure to invest more for its own protection. And the 2026 budget includes, for the first time, funding for Coast Guards. China's Xi Jinping touting unity and development during a rare visit to Lhasa, as Tibet marks 60 years as a Chinese autonomous region. And China's top diplomat Wang Yi calls to strengthen trilateral exchanges at all levels with Pakistan and Afghanistan, as Beijing seeks to boost security ties with its neighbors. A United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, says that Africa could become a renewable superpower, and he's calling for more investment in green energy for the resource-rich continent. Mr. Guterres said that finance and technology must be mobilized to build renewables and manufacturing base across the continent. The UN chief was speaking at the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Yokohama. A three-day conference also saw Japan call on its private sector to up investments in Africa amid U.S. cuts to foreign aid programs that have hit development projects. China, though, has invested heavily in the region with its Belt and Road Initiative in recent years. But new lending is drying up, and African countries are increasingly struggling with debt. For more analysis, we are joined by Samir Bhattacharya, Associate Fellow at independent think tank Observer Research Foundation. Well, thanks, Samir, for joining us this evening. So, first up, help us understand what has really changed in Tokyo's approach to Africa since the last time the leaders made the journey to Yokohama for TICAD 8, which was back in 2019.
See, there are a lot of changes in the world. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. So your question, what has changed? So first of all, the world has changed a lot in 2019. First, as you see, there is the Donald Trump phenomenon everywhere. Trump has very recently he's imposing tariffs almost to every country. He has imposed tariff to Japan almost straight to 15%. So Japan it's one of the most consistent partners of Africa. TICAD, the Tokyo International Forum, it has started in 1993. It's actually the first one to start, and it is very consistent. But this time, I think Japan has a renewed interest in Africa for several reasons. First of all, the geopolitical turbulences that has been going on around the world. Japan needs a steady partner, and Japan itself offers steady partnerships to Africa. Secondly, the Donald Trump tariff, the tariff tantrum that is going on for Japan, it requires a market. And Africa, it's with full of youth. The 1/3 of the continent is youth, and it is growing faster than the world average, almost at 3.5%. So Japan needs a rising market. I think from that angle also it's important. And also for Japan's industry, particularly in the sustainability. Japan is very good in sustainable industry, and Africa is where the critical minerals lie. So from that perspective also Japan needs Africa. But otherwise, many other aspects that has been consistent, like infrastructure development, health, education, transfer of skill, this kind of thing. So I think, yes, there is not really much change, except that the world is changing. Right. And Japan is responding to the needs of the changing world.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And you've mentioned about this renewed interest from Tokyo's point of view. But I mean, the question is are they signaling a real strategic pivot for Japan in Africa, that it goes beyond just words and statements and joint statements?
Yeah, sure. This is something that we need to observe over the next 3 years, because the intention of Ishiba government is clear. If you look at African market, the Japan's there are some investment, but it is very less if you compare to countries like China or West, or even many other countries. The Japan is very known for its ODA. Only 0.5% of its ODA goes to Africa. Private sector investment is very less. So Ishiba is saying that there will be more cooperation, private sector cooperation. There will be more we are going through the digital age. So there will be more cooperation on digital. There will be training on Japan is offering many scholarships. I guess something around 15,000 scholarships for AI or digital training. So I think, Japan is also careful, knows that what other countries are doing. So for example, in last summit, during the last G20, US has launched Lobito Corridor. China is already known for its infrastructure project. I think during this summit, Japan is going to launch this Nakala Corridor, which can connect Mozambique with landlocked Malawi and possibly Zambia and Zimbabwe. So I think intention is there. Now implementation will have to watch for next 3 years.
Yeah, implementation of things. So back to what we talked about, the investments side of things. I read one of your articles and you said that Japan is bringing new public-private tools to lower market risks for its firms in Africa. But Samir, in real terms, how is that actually helping companies compete when we talked about China's scale and speed, the way that they do things?
Yeah, so see, Japan understands that it's not a state-led capitalism. It cannot force its companies to go there. China has already invested a lot, and Japan probably does not have that reach, whether be it economic or physical. So Japan wants to, but it needs to respond to the needs. African needs. One good thing about Japan is that it does not have the colonial baggage that other Western countries are carrying. It does not have bad reputation of political intervention or debt trap diplomacy that China is carrying. But Japan understands its limitations, so it is trying to create some mechanism through which it can reduce the risk for its private sector, because ultimately it has to be government to government, cannot lead to go a long way. It has to be led by public, people to people connection and the private sector. So I will not be, Japan is already working with countries like India on say Japan-India Business Forum. It's working with Australia on critical minerals partnership. I'm sure going forward, Japan will also seek other partnerships with like-minded countries and try to, reduce the risk for its private sector.
All right, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so very much for sharing your insights with us. Samir Bhattacharya, Associate Fellow at independent think tank Observer Research Foundation. Turning our attention to other news, Japan is set to deploy long-range anti-ship missiles to the country's southwest region as part of efforts to expand Tokyo's counter-strike capabilities. Well, that's as the Defense Ministry announced plans to extend the range of its Type 12 surface-to-ship missile to 1,000 kilometers. Well, the ministry says the Ground Self-Defense Force camp in Kumamoto Prefecture, located more than 1,100 kilometers away from the capital, Tokyo, will receive its first batch of missiles before March next year. If deployed there, they could reach China's coastline and almost all of North Korea. Tokyo is reportedly planning to gradually deploy the upgraded long-range weapons to 7 regiments across Japan, including those in Kumamoto City, as well as Oita and Okinawa prefectures. Observers say the move can be viewed as a deterrent to China, whose military is stepping up maneuvers around Japan's Nansei Islands. Well, a new report says that North Korea has an undeclared missile base near its border with China, potentially housing its newest long-range ballistic missiles. A U.S.-based Center for Strategic and International Studies identified the Sinpungdong missile operating base, located about 27 kilometers from the Chinese frontier. The report says it likely houses 6 to 9 nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missiles and their launchers. It added that the missiles, quote, pose a potential nuclear threat to East Asia and the continental United States. The base is believed to be among Pyongyang's 15 to 20 undeclared missile and warhead facilities. Well, the isolated nation has ramped up its nuclear program amid heightened global tensions and conflicts. Well, the report of Pyongyang's undeclared missile base comes as South Korean President Xi Jinping revealed a 3-stage denuclearization plan for the North during an interview with Japanese media Yomiuri Shimbun. He says that he will seek to freeze, reduce, and then finally dismantle Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. Mr. Yi adds that his administration will establish conditions for those goals by actively pursuing inter-Korean dialogue while maintaining close coordination with the U.S. Mr. Yi is also proposing to develop an Arctic shipping route as a potential area of cooperation among the two Koreas, plus the U.S., Japan, and Russia. The South Korean leader has been seeking to ease tensions since taking office. North Korea, though, has been critical of Seoul's peace efforts. Now, a fire on a U.S. Navy ship anchored off Okinawa in Japan was put out earlier today after burning for about 12 hours. 2 American sailors sustained minor injuries. Now, the blaze broke out on the USS New Orleans at around 4 p.m. local time yesterday. 4 Japanese vessels spent most of the night dousing the fire. The Navy said its crew will remain aboard the ship, which can hold up to 800 people. Now, the 200-meter-long vessel is currently anchored off the White Beach Naval Facility. The cause of the incident, is under investigation. Coming up next on East Asia tonight, China slams New Zealand for calling Beijing one of the most active powers that's engaging in foreign interference in the country. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un praises his nation's troops that are helping Moscow fight its war against Ukraine.
Progress and pain during Japan's 5-decade-long occupation of Taiwan. Ties that endure and wounds that linger 80 years on. Japan's colonial experiment in Taiwan. Tuesday on CNA.
From the shadowy history of the cities of tomorrow, step inside the stories that define our world this September on CNA. 80 years since World War II, security challenges remain in the forefront. Japan continues to boost its defences, while Taiwan prepares for contingencies as China asserts its influence further. Explore the perspectives shaping peace in the region when titans clash. In the heart of Singapore, architecture tells our story. Join architect Jenny Wu as she explores how the city's design shapes the way we live, work and connect in Metropolis. Undercover Asia returns for a new season to investigate how unregulated gaming apps are pushing players into debt and despair in India. In Georgia, a shadowy surrogacy network connecting Chinese couples with Thai women raises legal and ethical alarms. And along the dangerous donkey route, migrants risk everything to get to the country of their dreams. This September on CNA.
So, Singapore, I've never been there.
1,000 Singapores can house the whole world.
Singapore is a city of juxtaposition.
The story of cities. Metropolis, coming soon on CNA.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that a meeting with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, is possible, but only after the security guarantees for his country have been agreed on. Now, Mr. Zelenskyy said that Kyiv wants to have, quote, an understanding of these guarantees in 7 to 10 days. His comments come after Moscow said that it must be included in any talks on security guarantees for Kyiv, just days after U.S. President Donald Trump met with European leaders to discuss the issue. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that discussions which exclude Moscow will lead nowhere. The top Russian diplomat also took aim at Monday's White House gathering. He accused European leaders of, quote, clumsy and unethical attempts to sway President Trump's position on Ukraine. The U.S. leader has been pushing for a meeting between Presidents Putin and Zelenskyy. While Mr. Lavrov did not make any direct reference to a possible summit between both leaders, he said that Moscow is ready for talks with Kyiv in any format.
Президент не раз говорил, что мы готовы к работе в любых форматах, при понимании, что работа будет честная и не будет сводиться к попыткам, как это делают прежде всего руководителей ведущих европейских стран создать условия для того, чтобы вновь затянуть Соединенные Штаты в свою агрессивную, воинственную кампанию по сохранению и усилению даже Украины в качестве инструмента сдерживания России.
The Ukrainian leader has separately said that he did not want China to play a role in guaranteeing its security. Mr. Zelenskyy, citing Beijing's alleged support from Moscow, said that China did not help stop the war from the start. And at the time, Kyiv really needed it, as he noted that it had assisted Russia by, quote, opening its drone market. NATO military leaders had earlier met virtually to discuss post-war security guarantees for Kyiv. A smaller meeting then continued in Washington between senior military leaders, including U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane. It remains unclear what security guarantees Ukraine could get. President Trump has ruled out sending U.S. troops, while Vice President J.D. Vance says that Europe will have to, quote, take the lion's share of the burden. Russia, though, has always insisted it will not accept the deployment of European forces in Ukraine. Well, hopes for a quick end to the war have also been tempered. Moscow has not confirmed that President Putin will sit down with his Ukrainian counterpart for talks. Dr. Matthew Sussex, Associate Professor at the Griffith Asia Institute, Griffith University, tells us more about the issue of security guarantees and why it has been such a complicated sticking point in any peace negotiation.
When it comes to security guarantees, it's certainly the case that Russia has absolutely no interest in seeing NATO or EU boots on the ground, and it's said on a number of occasions that it wouldn't tolerate that. The problem is, of course, for Ukraine to be able to feel secure in the aftermath of hostilities ceasing, it's really going to have that kind of security presence. Otherwise, the type of assurances that could be given to Ukraine are just as flimsy as way back in 1994, when, of course, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, and that's something that it regrets very much to this day. What's been talked about is a sort of NATO-like set of security guarantees, but the extent to which that involves NATO members or EU members deploying military personnel to Ukraine is still something that's very much open for discussion. There are about 30 nations that are part of this so-called coalition of the willing, who are discussing the types of things that they might be able to provide to Ukraine, whether or not it's weapons, whether it's intelligence, whether it's logistics, or whether it's actually, people, combat personnel. And there's some vacillation between, the European leaders about this. Friedrich Merz, for instance, the German Chancellor, has said he doesn't think that German forces on Ukrainian soil is a good thing. But then there's others who do think so. The point here, I guess, is that, well, if this is not acceptable to Russia, then Russia will just simply keep on fighting, just as if the incentives for security for Ukraine aren't sufficient, they can also keep on fighting. So I think there's a long way to go before we get to a realistic peace in this conflict.
Meantime, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has heaped praise on his nation's troops who are helping Russia in its war against Ukraine. State media KCNA said that Mr. Kim hailed those serving in the Kursk region as heroic during a meeting with officers of the Army's overseas operation. South Korean, along with Western intelligence agencies, had said that Pyongyang sent more than 10,000 soldiers to Kursk in 2024, along with artillery shells, missiles, and long-range rocket systems. Seoul said that some 600 North Korean soldiers have been killed and thousands more were wounded fighting for Moscow. The ties between North Korea and Russia have grown closer in recent years. Mr. Kim and President Vladimir Putin signed the Strategic Partnership Treaty in June last year, which includes a mutual defense pact. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has accused New Zealand of spreading rumors after Wellington's spy agency called Beijing the most active power that's engaging in foreign interference within the country. The Chinese embassy in Wellington earlier said that New Zealand was poisoning bilateral ties, noting that they are, quoted, smears and slanders fabricated elsewhere for the local audience. It also said that firm measures would, if necessary, be taken in the face of so-called groundless attacks. A New Zealand Security Intelligence Service, in its annual threat report, said the country's almost certainly affected by undetected espionage activity coming from a range of state actors, with critical organizations, infrastructure and technology among the targets. New Zealand is part of the Five Eyes Intelligence and Security Alliance that includes Australia, Canada, the UK and the US. Wellington is seen to have upped its rhetoric on China's growing influence in the region amid a rise in geopolitical tensions. Well, Microsoft has limited some Chinese companies' access to its early warning system for cybersecurity vulnerabilities. This follows speculation that Beijing was involved in a hacking campaign launched against Microsoft SharePoint servers last month. Experts suspect there was a leak in the Microsoft Active Protections Program, or MAPP. It's a platform Microsoft uses to inform security vendors worldwide, including those in China, on cybersecurity threats before they are made known to the general public, so that such companies can provide updated protections for their customers faster. Chinese firms affected by the move will no longer receive the proof of concept code from Microsoft. Such codes are intended to mimic how the genuine malicious software would operate, but they could be repurposed by hackers to gain an advantage over cybersecurity firms. Well, Microsoft said that it first detected exploitation attempts against SharePoint on 7th of July. It had notified members of the early warning program on separate occasions in the lead up to that observation. China has earlier denied its involvement in any of the hackings. Right now, some headlines from media outlets in East Asia. Radio Television Hong Kong says the city's government has terminated contracts with a firm that has been accused of fraud in supplying drinking water to its offices. The company's director and his shareholder wife have been arrested. NHK says approaching tropical storm Ling Ling could make landfall in Japan's Kyushu on Friday. The Met Agency warns that heavy rains that the storm brings could raise the risk of disasters. The region, which includes Kagoshima, has in recent weeks been lashed by record rains. Yonhap reports that South Korea's National Assembly has passed one of 3 controversial bills aimed at reducing the government's influence over public broadcasters. The main opposition, People Power Party, objected to the bill and boycotted the vote in protest. From dramas to music, the Korean wave has won over fans all around the world. And President Myung joined South Korean artists in a TV talk show where they highlighted the country's growing cultural prowess. Among the artists were co-director of the mega-hit animated film K-pop Demon Hunters, Maggie Kang. Well, she stressed how Korea's culture was limitless and can resonate worldwide.
네, 한계가 없어요. 네, 제가 이 영화를 만들면서 연구도 많이 했고, 그런데 제가 모르는 게 너무 많더라고요. 우리 한국 문화에 대해서. 네. 그래서 더욱더 많이 세계에 보여줄 수 있는 게 너무 많아서 네, 끝이 없다고 봅니다.
Jio and Jonghyun of the K-pop girl group Twice were also present. They noted their performances attracted global audiences drawn to the Korean language and culture.
이제는 정말 큰 스타디움 공연장에서 이제 외국에서 할 수 있다는 거는 어쨌든 저희가 인기가 좀 더 많아지고 아는 사람들이 많아진다는 뜻이니까. 네. 그래서 그런 것도 너무 신기하기도 하고 또 한국말을 또 배워서.
President Lee also added to the artist's comments, saying he is determined to advance his country as a cultural powerhouse.
결국 사람들의 문화적 욕구를 충족시키는 게 중요한 과제, 미래 과제가 될 겁니다. 결국 거기에 우리가 얼마나 빨리 선착하느냐가 중요할 텐데 우리가 관심을 가지고 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 우리 자부심 가지고 국민들이 자부심 느끼고 국가적으로 자랑스러운 문화국가로, 문화강국으로 우리가 나아갈 수 있다. 꼭 그렇게 만들 생각입니다.
That's this Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. And you can always find us on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.